I've been traveling the world for nearly 2 years, and in that time, I have had the privilege of traveling to the United Kingdom for all of 1.5 days. Bearing that in mind, I didn't really get a chance to experience the cultural nuances of the UK. That said, in this video, we will be analyzing Americans experiencing British culture shocks.
One thing about me is that I will just never understand the cultural, work ethic, work-life balance in the US. I'm an American that lives in the UK, and I've lived here for ages. I've never actually had, a real job in the US. I've only really had jobs in the UK because this is where I live and this is where I have lived for a while. But I'm in a unique situation where I actually work for a company that has offices in the US, and I have a lot of coworkers in the US. So I can often compare my experience working with not only my friends and family, but also my coworkers. And it is just madness over there. Following the obvious things like healthcare and gun control, that's the number one reason I never want to move back to the US. This might be very Gen Z of me, but I do not live to work. And the UK is so much worse for that than so many parts of Europe, but compared to America, girl, so much better. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the average time off you get in the US is maybe 2 weeks. So when you're off, there's pressure to keep working, or to at least be available for calls or Slacks or messages, emails, whatever. And over here, it's just, that's not the vibe. I get 25 days of holiday, which is honestly on the lower end for a lot of jobs, and bitch, you best know I'm gonna be taking every single one of those days. Anyways, yeah, maybe I'm really lazy, but that life is not for me.
So I really resonate with what she just said there. That life is not for me. Growing up in the USA, I don't think I ever saw my parents take a vacation longer than 2 weeks, to her point, because I think that's pretty much the standard in the US if you have vacation at all, because I don't think companies are actually required to provide you with any paid vacation, which is ridiculous for a first world country, but I digress. I think that's a big part of the reason why I had such a strong aversion to the 9 to 5 ideal growing up. And that's probably about 90% of the reason why I ended up becoming a content creator, was so that I could create my own work-life balance at my own discretion. I often wonder if I had grown up in Europe, whether in the UK, in mainland Europe, or wherever else, if I would have had the same drive to start and operate this YouTube channel like I have over the past however many years I've been doing this. Because I suspect that a lot of the entrepreneurial spirit that you see from Americans really comes from a disdain for the working conditions of your average American. I mean, aside from the work-life balance issue, something like at-will employment. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK, but it's definitely not a thing in the mainland European countries that I'm familiar with, where they can just fire you at any given time for any given reason. I mean, something like that, when you think about the prospect of security and stability that a job is supposed to provide, I personally think that at-will employment is mutually exclusive with that ideal. And I think common sense would tell you the same thing. And yet so many Americans continue to settle for that. And on top of that, this is a whole different discussion, but they will willingly go into $80,000 or $60,000, $100,000 of student loan debt for that lifestyle. So now they're basically trapped. They have to work at this job. And on top of that, they get their health insurance through their employer. So, I mean, when you talk about leverage, their employers have all the leverage. And that's why they can set up these crazy working conditions for your average American. Now, it's all relative, and I love that she provided that nuanced perspective that compared to some other European countries, maybe the UK's working culture is a little more extreme. I'm actually reading this book right now called Living Danishly, I want to say. And basically the premise of the book is this British person moves with her husband to Denmark to experience the work-life balance. Now, I'm still pretty early on in the book, but the one thing that she really emphasized in these early pages was how crazy UK working culture can be. So It's just so fascinating to see how relative everything is because for your average American, Chinese working culture is crazy with the 996, working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. That's absolutely insane. So, I mean, it's really on a spectrum, and even within the UK, I'm sure there are people, some outliers, who are putting in 70 or 80-hour weeks, but it's nice to know that the government, at the very least, has your back.
Guys, one of the craziest things that I experienced since moving from Florida to London was the food. It is insane to me, the food concept in the UK versus in the US. I mean, obviously, we know that there is that whole topic on food and how the food in the US is just poison, basically. But seeing it firsthand was absolutely insane to me. There are just three things that really caught my attention. One of them was the accessibility of getting healthy foods everywhere. The second one is what people actually eat at home. The third one, the quality of the food, of course. When I got here, I was in shock. You know how like in the US we have corner shops? Well, in here in the UK, there are just little shops everywhere. And in the US, those shops are usually just filled with snacks, chips, hot dogs, and things like that. Like nothing really healthy. In here, as soon as I walked into one of those shops, the first thing you see is a whole assortment of vegetables and fruits. Of course, you know, if the first thing that you're going to see when you walk into a store are vegetables and fruits, you're going to automatically make a better decision on what to eat. One of my favorite things to do when I got here was go to the supermarkets and see like the assortment of things they had, and their vegetables and fruits section is so amazing. There's not so much packaged stuff. Everything is just kind of like, you know, in the open, just super fresh. Something else that was super interesting is that in here, there's not as much fast food restaurants everywhere. In the US, there's Burger King, McDonald's, Chipotle, like everywhere you go. In here, instead, they have chicken shops. Chicken shops are so interesting to me. The amount of chicken people eat here, like I've never eaten so much chicken in my life. In fact, sometimes chicken gives me like the heebie-jeebies. I don't know. Ooh, but chicken here is actually really good. Now, saying that, I did find it hard to find like vegetables that I would eat either in Colombia or Florida. One of my friends, guys, didn't even know what a plantain was. I was shocked. So obviously, I had to go look for plantain so I can make him tostones. But I couldn't find it anywhere. Then the other day, I'm walking by my house's high road and I look down in this corner shop and there was fucking plantain. I couldn't believe it. I bought like 7 of them because things are so natural here. They went bad like in a week, which is another topic on quality of the food. It is absolutely insane how in the US, I could have a tomato in the fridge for a whole month and that thing would be intact. Here, a tomato lasts max 5 days. So if you have any recommendations of supermarkets and places where I can find Latin ingredients, I would greatly appreciate it. The other thing is what people actually eat here for like lunch, dinner. In Colombia and in the US, it's very normal to have your bigger meal of the day in the afternoon and just like a smaller meal at night. But I found that here people, I mean, at least the people I know, like to eat something lighter for lunch and then at night have like a proper meal. I don't know if that's normal, but that's something that I've noticed here. And then in that same topic is what people actually eat. I've noticed that here people eat like a girl dinner. It is very normal to do a plate of like cheese, olives, piece of bread, nuts, and things like that. And that in the US would only be done like on a party to have sort of like snacks there on the table for everybody to grab. Okay, and completely off topic, but you know what was crazy to see, and I really wasn't expecting it, was the amount of Indian food that people eat here in the UK. There are so many Indian restaurants, like Indian, Thai, sort of like really Asian. I had no idea that was something that was so available here. I mean, if you think about it, in Miami, it's like the Cuban restaurants, so it kind of makes sense, but I just had no idea that that was the norm here. And then finally is the quality and the price of food. As I said before, I got here in the US, I would have something in my fridge. I could have it for a whole month and it would be okay, which is absolutely disgusting. In the UK, you cannot have food in your fridge for more than 5 days because it will most definitely go bad. In fact, when I just got here, guys, I got food poisoning like 3 times because I was on US time, you know what I mean? So I would leave things in the fridge and maybe 1-2 extra days, and then I would just get food poisoning and just be in bed for like 3 days. It was absolutely horrifying and disgusting. But anyway, finally is the price. I could talk about this for hours because I just cannot believe the prices of the food here. In the US, a tray of ribeye steak is about $20. In here, you can get a tray of ribeye for, I mean, and I'm telling you, like Wagyu type of style, for 8 pounds, 7 pounds. How does that make sense? Like, why is that happening?
I'm not gonna lie, all of this talk about food is making me hungry. Bearing that in mind, it'd be really, really nice to be able to go to a local small convenience store and have a wide assortment of vegetables and fruit available to me. Oh wait, I have that. Here in Vietnam, I have that. In Thailand, I had that. And in pretty much every other country I visited, which all of them were in Europe, I have had that. It seems like the US is the lone exception to this rule. Now, to be fair, taking into account how American cities are structured and how most consumer behavior revolves around big box stores like Walmart, Target, etc., I'm inclined to believe that maybe the convenience stores or the corner stores that she was seeing in the UK were actually grocery stores, where in the US, even though they might be the same size as a grocery store you might find in Europe or here in Southeast Asia, the whole concept is completely different. It's not really intended for fresh fruits and vegetables because it's a convenience store. That said, this does highlight the lack of small, accessible stores, non-big box stores that have fresh fruits and vegetables, especially within an affordable price range. But we'll get to the cost of groceries here in a second. Now, this isn't to say that fruits and vegetables are completely inaccessible in the USA. Of course, people have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. At the end of the day, it is a first world country. Kind of. That said, what I noticed myself, especially when I moved to the Netherlands for 14 months, was that it's a whole different level of quality of fruits and vegetables. Maybe I shouldn't even call it fresh fruits and vegetables in the US because truthfully, a lot of it, to her point, is stuff that you can put in the fridge and kind of just forget about for a couple of weeks and then just eat it like nothing ever happened, which is extremely sketchy. When I went to the Netherlands, I was very surprised to find that bread, if left outside of the freezer for more than around 5 or 6 days at a time, would mold. Whereas in the US, it wasn't uncommon to leave bread out for up to 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And it might get a little bit stale, but you wouldn't have mold and it would still be edible. At least I think it was edible because, again, if it's able to hold for that long, that might be indicative of a larger issue. Indian food. Indian food in the UK is something that I most certainly want to try, and I do regret not having tried because as a vegan, Indian food provides me with a wide plethora of options of tasty food to choose from without compromising on my personal morals. And it seems like outside of India, the UK is right there at the top of the world in terms of tasty Indian cuisine. Bearing that in mind, if you have any specific recommendations for what I should try, leave them in the comments below. Again, I'm vegan, so keep that in mind, but if you have a specific restaurant in the UK or you have a specific dish that you think I should try, comment down below. Now, one of the most beautiful things about food in Europe, and this includes the UK as well, is not only that the food is higher quality, but also it's cheaper. So you have higher quality food for cheaper. And again, I think the reason why, I don't really know all of the logistics behind how this is possible, but my theory is that, again, with universal healthcare that the government is heavily subsidizing, there's pretty much no incentive to make healthy food inaccessible for your common person. In the US, again, you can access fruits and vegetables, but they're gonna be lower quality. You can access bread, but it's gonna be lower quality. In order to get that same quality, you need to go to Sprouts, Whole Foods, or buy just organic stuff from a place like Target. And your average American simply can't afford to do that.
Culture shocks I've gotten as an American living in England. I've been here about a month, and one of the biggest culture shocks I've gotten is that nobody here makes eye contact. And I mean nobody. All we do is walk here, so I'm passing people on the street every single day. There's no good morning, there's no anything like that. So yes, I'm the weird American who's saying good morning to my neighbors every morning on my morning walks, and I'm making small talk with the people working at the coffee shop. And in a humbling way, men don't look at you either. You know when you're like passing someone on the side of the street and you like make eye contact with the guy and you're like, you think I'm cute, and it just like boosts your ego a little bit, and it's just like, there was nothing out of that, but like, we're acknowledging we think each other's attractive. None of that. And my like favorite feature about myself is my eyes. So literally no eye contact. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Not that I'm looking for a guy here, but it'd be nice for them to look at me.
So in regards to her point about no eye contact or small talk, I'm inclined to believe with this person in the comments right here who said, must be London, because I feel like this isn't really a UK specific thing. I reckon that for most people in most countries, they'll find that the bigger of a city they're in, and especially the denser of a city they're in, the less eye contact and small talk they'll experience on a day-to-day basis. Or rather, it could also be that relative to the amount of people that they're seeing, they're experiencing less in relative terms, but from an absolute standpoint, they're still having those same number of interactions. It's just that, again, it's relative to the thousands of people that they're coming across in their day-to-day life. Humans in general are social creatures. We all crave some degree of social intimacy or social interaction at the very least. But at the same time, humans tend to appreciate things when they're deprived of those things. And I think that for a lot of Americans, they don't really understand going to Europe that most places are a lot more dense and you don't really need a car in a lot of cities, even smaller towns. And because of that, people interact with each other, even if indirectly, more often than they would in the US, where in the US, more often than not, we're spending our time in the car. And I think that because of this, Americans don't understand that Europeans don't have that same degree of social deprivation that your average American has. And so they try to take these same social habits overseas with them, and it doesn't work. It is simply incompatible. And honestly, I always kind of felt like a black sheep within American society for this reason, especially growing up in the South, where I'm much more in line with how people in at least London interact, or rather don't interact. I kind of like being left to my own devices. I like staying out of the way and just doing my own thing uninterrupted. But I can understand why someone would, again, crave that social interaction, especially moving to a different country where you don't already have that network in place.